Hey, good evening, Chimney World. Thanks for joining us tonight here at SureFire Live. And I'm not Mark Stoner. I'm Jim Brewer, and I'll be hosting tonight. It's my first time hosting, but Mark, our regular host, had a little medical thing done and needed a break this week. So I'm helping out, and thanks for joining us, and I hope everybody's having a great week. My week's off to a great start, and looking forward to the National Chimney Sweep Guild Convention next week in Las Vegas. Hopefully, I'll see a bunch of you guys there. And I'm actually getting ready to move, bought a new house, and I was cleaning out closets, and I found this 15-year-old National Chimney Sweep Guild t-shirt. Looked like it'd never been worn. It was still all folded up nice and neat. So I thought that was appropriate. So normally SureFire Live is about business topics, stuff like that. And tonight we won't be talking about business per se, but we're going to certainly be talking about things that are important to our business here in Chimney World. We're going to talk about some changes that are coming in the pipeline to the National Chimney Sweep, to the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association chimney inspection standard. And those proposals were submitted by the National Chimney Sweep Guild. For many years now, I have been the National Chimney Sweep Guild representative to NFPA 211, which, as you probably know, is the chimneys, fireplaces standard. And it contains the chimney inspection standard for the inspection of chimneys and fireplaces. That standard was created by the National Chimney Sweep Guild in the late 90s and submitted to NFPA, and it was first published in the 2000 edition of NFPA 211. Well, NFPA 211 is revised every 3 years. And so there's been, I don't know what, 7, 8 revisions, probably 7 since the 2000 edition. And there has not been a single change to the chimney inspection standard yet. But through experience, we've seen the need to make some changes. And so we proposed, the National Chimney Sweep Guild proposed changes that are being discussed in this current cycle. So I'm going to review those with you tonight. And, feel free to make a comment. And, if you have a question or something, throw it in the comments. I'll try to be watching those and address any concerns or questions that you have. So I hope you find this meaningful or at least helpful. And I got the idea to do this because a few weeks ago on one of the Facebook groups, there was a question that came up about the chimney inspection standard, and I answered it and mentioned that there would some changes coming down the pike, and that generated a lot of questions and comments, and so I thought this would be a good time to talk about it. These changes, proposed changes, have been previously reported in Sweeping Magazine as well, for those of you who are members of the National Chimney Sweep Guild. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up the proposals, and we're just going to kind of, I'll read through them and tell you why we did that, to go ahead and so I'm getting comments that there's a lot of background noise. I'm going to turn off the air conditioning in here and see if that does anything. I don't know if maybe that will help. I just turned the air conditioning off in my office. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put up the proposals, and these proposals, NFPA updates every 3 years, and it's kind of a long process. You have to submit the proposals, then the committee reviews it, and then they publish their results, and then the public gets to vote on them. Anyway, these proposals were submitted over 2 years ago. The deadline for the proposals was January 9th of 2020, right before the wonderful pandemic hit us. So anyway, the first change that we submitted actually is one of the ones that didn't get accepted. But this change, and you can see here on the screen, proposal number 1 was about the scope of the standard. The scope of a standard defines its application, or, it says, okay, we are going to cover these topics. So the scope is very important because it kind of sets the stage for everything to come. And so this change was recommended, and you can see here in 1.1 scope. This is presented in legislative format. That means text that is being removed is shown with a strike through, and then text that is added is shown underlined. So basically, we took fireplaces from the middle of the sentence and stuck it on the end. And you might think, well, that's kind of a stupid thing to do. But let me tell you why we did that. Because as it's currently written, it says, this standard applies to the design, installation, maintenance, and inspection of all chimneys, fireplaces, venting systems, and solid fuel burning appliances. Well, the standard doesn't really apply to all fireplaces, particularly with respect to gas fireplaces. There is no coverages for gas fireplaces in the standard. So, but as it's currently reading, it says it applies to all fireplaces. So by moving fireplaces to the end of the sentence, it says, that it covers solid fuel burning appliances and fireplaces. So we wanted to make it clear that the coverage is for solid fuel burning fireplaces. And this is important because later on in the standard, when we're setting up requirements for, level 1, level 2 inspections, we need to be inspecting things that are within the scope of the standard. And people are using the inspection standard to do level 1 and level 2 inspections on gas fireplaces. But the standard wasn't written with those things in mind. And if you disagree with that, take a look at what the standard really says. If we were writing a safety standard or an inspection standard for gas fireplaces, it would include language like make sure there's no gas leaks, make sure that there's a some type of flame supervision device like a safety pilot or flame rectification. There's no mention of gas fireplaces anywhere. So that's why this proposal was written. And unfortunately, the committee did not accept that proposal. They just didn't feel it was necessary. I'll be talking with folks at the National Chimney Sweep Guild to decide if we want to kind of go back and revisit this. So let me tell you a little bit about how the process works. There's a deadline to submit proposals, and anybody can submit those proposals. And then the committee reviews all of the proposals, and they can accept them, they can reject them, or they can modify them. And then all of that information is published, and there's a public comment period. And that's where we are now. The things we're talking about now have had their first round of committee action. They're out for public comment until the end of May this year. So if you don't like something that was done, you can submit a comment directly to NFPA. And then there will be another round of committee meetings where the committee will look at all the comments that were submitted, and they can reconsider, ideas and proposals. So there is still an opportunity that this or other actions that didn't get approved could be approved. So we got one question here. So I'm going to show this. Andrew says, so where do the standards split between a vented or ventless gas log and a chimney that is placed in? Well, that's a great question. It really is, because the appliance standard or installation instructions for the gas log will tell you to put it in a fireplace that complies with NFPA 211. That's typically how they handle it. But NFPA 211 doesn't really have coverage for the appliance. If you want coverage for gas appliances, you need to go to another standard, NFPA 54, the National Fuel Gas Code. So the bottom line when you're installing these appliances is you've got to follow their directions. They kind of come first, and then the standard is secondary, but you can't ignore either one. You have to look at them together. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next proposal. I got to scroll my screen down. In this one, we got into some stuff on accessibility. This has been really one of the troublesome concepts or issues within the inspection standard. For example, the inspection standard says you have to go in the attic and crawl space to do a level 2 inspection. But when are these things really accessible? Or when are they safe to go in? So one thing that was added was accessibility shall not require the inspector to enter areas that will, in the professional judgment of the inspector, likely be dangerous to the inspector, other persons, or the property. So that was added in, and it makes it clear that we expect the inspector to use good judgment, and we don't want to be going in areas that are unsafe. Okay, and then so that was part of our proposal. And then the second part of the proposal was defining some areas or times when they weren't safe. And what you're seeing now on the screen is what the National Chimney Sweep Guild proposed. And then I'll show you how the NFPA committee modified that. But you can see that we put in a paragraph that says attics which provide less than 48-inch vertical clearance or 24-inch clearance are generally considered not accessible. Attics without walkways and having insulation which conceals the ceiling joist are generally considered not accessible. Attics with a temperature exceeding 115 degrees, not accessible. Crawl spaces with less than 24 inches of vertical clearance are not accessible. And then hazards such as standing water, sewage, animal waste, broken glass, exposed or unsupported electric wires, dangerous animals or insects will generally render an attic or crawl space inaccessible. So the committee basically accepted this, but they modified the way it was presented, and in the code, it will be presented as you see it here, more in kind of a, I guess it's an easier read format. But I think this is really going to clarify things that have been a concern. You know, if the attic is full of blown-in insulation, there's no walkways, and you have to kind of feel your way through trying to locate each ceiling joist before you take that next step. Do we really need to be in there? If it's above 115 degrees, do we need to be in there? So I think this is going to be a really positive change for the standard. And then things like standing water, animal waste or sewage, broken glass, animals, and so forth would basically render the crawl space or attic inaccessible. So I think that's a good change, and that was basically accepted by the committee. They just kind of restructured the way we presented it. So so I like that. Let's see if we've got any comments on that before I move on to the next one. So Bart says that would be a great improvement. It lets us make a safety judgment. And then Chad, you know, Chad's down there in Texas, and he says, wow, hot attics. My guys will like that. It's hot in Texas, man. I was doing some training down there for Chad, and it was rough on the rooftops. So, okay. So the next one, and this is also another one that did not get accepted by the committee, but what the guild proposed was inspections required by this chapter shall be limited to appliances and systems regulated by this standard. Okay, so and then we added an appendix section that kind of explained it. And for example, when a gas or oil-fired furnace is connected to a masonry chimney, the inspector is required to inspect the connector in the chimney, but not the appliance. And that's another thing that has been a concern, is how do we do a level 1 inspection on an appliance chimney that's got an oil furnace inspected? Are we responsible for inspecting any part of that oil-fired furnace? The standard doesn't tell us what we would be inspecting for or how to inspect it. And since oil-fired appliances are outside the scope of NFPA 211, we thought this would be a good way to handle it. Clearly solid fuel appliances like wood-burning stoves and fireplaces are within the scope of 211, but oil or gas-fired appliances are not. Unfortunately, again, this is another one that the committee did not accept. Yeah, I'm a little displeased with that, but we may take another shot at it. Okay. So let me see if we've got any comments there. Andrew Davenport says, should have added hypodermic needles to the mix. Wow, you finding those in attics or crawl spaces? I guess. And then Andrew says, why? Not sure what you mean there, Andrew. If you want to try again, I'll take another look at that in a second. Not sure what you're asking about. Okay, so let's move on to okay, so he says, why wasn't it accepted? Well, I think it was in my opinion, and I'm not speaking for the NFPA committee now, I'm just giving you my opinion. I think it was a territorial thing that they didn't really want to admit that they don't cover those appliances. But I think that's, I just don't see how they can make that argument, because there's absolutely no coverage for gas or oil fired appliances in the code. So I think this is one that we might make some traction on in the second round. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. This dealt with incomplete inspections, and what we said here was where inspections are indicated or requested at a specific level, but circumstances prevent the completion of that level of inspection, the inspector shall indicate the level of inspection completed. The inspector shall document the reasons the higher level inspection was not done. So, for example, you're supposed to do a level 2 inspection during a real estate transaction. If for some reason you're not able to do it, then you would indicate we did a level 1 inspection and document why that higher level or indicated level was not done. So basically, this one was accepted, but again, they just kind of changed the way it was presented, as you can see here. So if for some reason you can't do the indicated level, like say there's been a chimney fire and you should do a level 2, but you can't, indicate the level that was completed and document it. So again, I think that's a good change, and it just addresses questions that have come up many times about what to do when you can't do what's indicated. Okay. Okay. So the next one was about basically entering attics, basements, and crawl spaces during a level 1 inspection. This has been a little bit of a confusing thing. And I can tell you, because I was there when the original chimney inspection standard was written, it was never envisioned or contemplated that a level 1 inspection would include going in attics or crawl spaces. And kind of a proof of that, I offer that under the level 2 inspection, it says you will inspect in attics or crawl spaces or basements to the extent they are accessible. Okay. If we had envisioned doing those during a level 1 inspection, there would be companion language that says, enter and inspect attics, basements, and crawl spaces to the extent they are readily accessible. I think I think this is one of probably omitting those words was probably one of the biggest mistakes that was made when this thing was written 20 years ago. But I can tell you, it was never intended that you had any duty or requirement to go in basements, attics, or crawl spaces during a level 1 inspection. So we were trying to clean that language up in this proposal. And again, unfortunately, this one was also not accepted by the committee. So we'll probably go back on that. I think there was some people in the committee that really didn't understand what was happening there. Okay, let me pause, see if we've got any new comments. Not seeing any. Okay. All right. The next proposal was about video scanning, and this was, not a big change. And basically, what the standard says now is that you will, during a level 2 inspection, you will use video scanning equipment or other means as necessary to observe those areas. Well, we struck out the other means and included more advanced technological viewing systems. Because people were saying, well, if I shine a flashlight down the chimney or use a mirror to look down the chimney, that's other means. Well, the original intent of the other means was something that provided equal or better results than you could achieve by video scanning. We didn't want it to be just anything, that a person could use but not provide satisfactory results. So we were basically trying to clean up that loophole, if you will, and the committee did accept that and made some changes. So it was accepted, but they modified the language, and they basically removed the word video and put image scanning equipment. And that goes to the fact that a lot of guys aren't using video because video is it's like a YouTube video. It's a moving thing. But a lot of guys are just taking pictures. They're using a video camera, but just taking still images by video. And so that's really image scanning equipment. So we did that and then added in, the more advanced technological viewing system. So this isn't a huge change or a big change, just cleaning up what some people had perceived as a loophole in the standard. So let me pause here, see if we've got any questions. Yeah, so Bart's an old timer. He says, I remember back in the day, there were people using the chimney periscope and they considered that other means. Well, yeah, Bart, that's a perfect example of what we're trying to clean up. Uh, we want something that at least produces comparable results to what we all know as a video scanner. Um, so that's kind of an editorial change, but there is some meat in that. Okay, so let's move on and look at the next one, and this deals with chimneys that have multiple flues in them, and the language that you see here, the underlined language, is what the National Chimney Sweep Guild proposed. And the proposal was to add an exception that the requirement to inspect all chimney flues and all flue liners is limited to the chimney flues and flue liners under the control of the inspector's client. Where multiple factory-built fireplaces and/or chimneys are installed in a common structure or chase, there's no requirement to inspect more than the systems requested to be inspected by the inspector's client. So that was the change recommended by the National Chimney Sweep Guild, and it was dealing with uh, primarily old chimneys in some old parts of town where you have row houses. You've got a chimney that's on the divider wall between two different townhouses, and there might be a fireplace and flue from one side and another fireplace and flue from the other side, but they're all in the same chimney. Well, the way the standard is currently written, if you're doing a level 2 inspection, you've got to inspect all of those flues and flue liners. Well, the folks next door don't want you coming over. You may not have access to it, things like that. So that change was recommended to clear up that situation. So again, this is another one that the committee liked the idea, but modified the language a little bit. And so what you see now, the underlined stuff, is what the committee approved and may be printed in the next edition. And it says that the requirement to inspect all chimney flues and all flue liners shall be limited to the chimney flues and flue liners requested to be inspected. And then where multiple factory-built fireplaces or chimneys are installed in a common structure or chase, the inspector shall not be required to inspect more than the systems requested to be inspected. So basically, the NCSG proposal dealt with chimneys and flue liners under the control of the inspector's client. So, if Mrs. Jones is calling you, they're your client. If the other system in that chimney structure was under her control, then it would still be included. Basically, what the committee approved says, if Mrs. Jones don't want it inspected, you're not required to inspect it. So it is a different there, but it kind of accomplishes the same thing. So that's basically a summary of the changes that are out there. and you may see in the next edition. Even the ones that the committee accepted could still be eliminated if they get lots of negative comments during the comment period. The committee will look at that, and they could revise their earlier action. So let's see, we got some new comments. Somebody, not sure who this is, says also seems a smart way to limit liability for the inspecting company, as if an issue happened while the second inaccessible chimney, according to the language, you could be held liable. And that was kind of what we were trying to do, is remove or free up that liability. Because basically the standard says you need to do it, but there's clearly cases where it wasn't practical or possible to do it. Okay. So, and then Andrew says the term requested seems dangerous to me, as if the realtor only wants us to look at one fireplace and not the other. Well, that is clearly possible. And my recommendation there is to make it clear in your paperwork what you did do and what you didn't do. Okay. At the end of the day, we are not the chimney police, and we can't make people do things they don't want to do or spend money they don't want to spend. So, but if you don't like this, you clearly can make comments to NFPA. Again, that comment period is open until May 31st of this year. So you can submit your comments at the NFPA website, and they will be considered at the next committee meeting. Yeah, if you don't like it, and so, okay, somebody says, could we give an overview of how to comment to the committee? Okay. Boy, I wish I could spell that out in a minute or two. It's a little bit of a complicated or confusing process, even for folks like me who are involved in this stuff. But you basically go to NFPA.org. You look up the NFPA 211 standard, and you look at there'll be a link to the public comment. And then you basically have to scroll down through the document, and you'll see highlighted text for the changes. And then once you get there, you can highlight that the new text and make a recommendation or comment on that. It used to be an easier process, but NFPA probably 7 or 8 years ago got this new system that was supposed to be marvelous called TerraView. Most of us that work with it call it Terrible View. I hope NFPA doesn't get mad at me for saying that, but that's kind of how it is. But if you want to make a comment and you're having trouble, reach out to me and I will try and help you with that process. It is a little bit cumbersome, but if you get in there and read the directions, it is clearly doable. All right, so let's see. We've got a comment here from Chad. What's Chad saying? So if Mrs. Jones only wants the living room inspected, but the basement flue is not to proper clearance in a shared chimney, are we okay to say this one passes and the other one is not our scope you hired us for? Well, yeah, I think so, Chad. Two comments there. Again, make it clear what you did do and didn't do. But nonetheless, if you see a hazard, you need to point it out. Even though you weren't contracted to inspect it, um, but you see a hazard, you still need to report on that. You don't have to go looking for those hazards, but if a reasonable person doing the job you were hired to do would have seen it, you need to report on it. And let's say you're doing a level 2 inspection of one chimney system or one flue system in the chimney, but it's obvious the other one, there's a giant bird's nest 6 inches from the top blocking the flue. Well, it would be hard for a reasonable person to say they didn't see that. So you need to report it. You're not required to go looking for it. If it's 20 feet down in there, then, you probably wouldn't have noticed it. So report what you see. So, wow. So, any other questions out there? We haven't used up our hour, but there's no law that says we have to use the hour. And then there was an earlier question I missed. David said, will this be recorded and available for broadcasting? I think so, David. I think we can make that available. Again, this is my first night hosting this, and I'm still struggling with the technology here a little bit. But I think that is doable, David, and I will try to accommodate that request. So Jameson says it would be nice to have these revisions presented as poll topics to show industry support or dissent. That's interesting. I will consider that. I don't know how NFPA would react to that. I don't know if they would even consider that, but I'll have to find out. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think if you have a comment that you want to make, you need to submit it through the process, but I'll see if that might be possible. And then we've got, let's see, could you comment on a set of pull down attic stairs, 1 or 2? Okay, well, my opinion, you were never expected to go in an attic for a level 1 inspection. And furthermore, if you look at the rating on a set of attic stairs, they're called disappearing ladders. It's a ladder. This is part of the reason that other change was promoted or proposed about not being required to go in attics and crawl spaces for level 1 inspections. Again, it was never intended to be that way when the standard was written. In my opinion, pull down attic stairs are not within the scope of a level 1 inspection, but that's my opinion. NFPA doesn't have an answer on that one way or another. So the final answer always comes from the jury on those kinds of things. When there's an issue, uh, that's usually who has the final say is the jury. Um, but yeah, clearly that's an area that there is not agreement in the industry on. Okay, so I think we've addressed all the comments that have come in. Uh, I hope you guys felt like this was helpful. Um, it's not what we normally do for SureFire Live. SureFire Live is usually business, but hey, I'm the technical guy, I'm the code guy, uh, and I like talking about this stuff. I hope I didn't make it too boring for you. Um, but the whole code making process in general, it's kind of like making sausage. Um, it's the outcome might be pretty good, but the process is nothing fun to watch, and it can be boring. Um, and then David says, just wanted to also mention the fact that the NCSG, whether you're a member or not, pays for Jim to be an NFPA representative for the NCSG. And yes, that's true. Um, they when I go to the NFPA meetings, I am representing the National Chimney Sweep Guild, and I do that as a volunteer. They don't pay for my time, but they do pay for my expenses. If I have travel expenses or hotels or something, they pay for that. But the time is something I do for the industry because frankly it's important, and I kind of enjoy doing it anyway. So um, there you go. Yeah. So, and I'm not. Excuse me, my voice is getting a little hoarse. Um, I'm not the only code rep. Um, I represent the National Chimney Sweep Guild on the 211 committee and the National Fuel Gas Code NFPA 54 committee. And the National Chimney Sweep Guild also has a seat on the NFPA 31 committee, which is oil appliances and oil venting. John Pilger held that seat for a good long time, but currently Steve Scally, I believe, is the NFPA 31 rep. And then comment here, could there ever be a standard for ladders, ropes, and scaffolding for chimney safety? Well, I think there kind of already is, Chad. It's this book right here called OSHA. Um, I don't know that that's something NFPA would get into, but clearly OSHA has rules and regulations for safety. So, yeah. All right, good stuff. Any other comments? Well, remember, guys, next week, Las Vegas, National Chimney Sweep Guild Convention. I'm looking forward to it. It's always a good time. I've been to every NCSG convention since 1980, and it's always a good time. And I look forward to being there and seeing friends and meeting people. And I get to just kind of kick back this time. It's probably the first time in 30 years I haven't done some kind of seminar or training there, and I'm not doing any of that this year. So good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Unless anybody's got any comments, I'll wrap it up. And I'm not sure what's going to happen next week On Tuesday night, the whole SureFire team will be traveling to Las Vegas. So not 100% sure that there will be SureFire Live next Tuesday. Uh, watch the group list. We'll let you know if it is going to be there. But I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't one next week, because I know all of us will be traveling to Las Vegas. And if you're coming to Las Vegas, stop by the SureFire booth and say hi. Um, and You're welcome, Andrew. I'm glad you found it useful, and hope to see a lot of you guys next week. So until then, stay safe out there, do good work, and have fun. Life's too short to do something you don't like. So try and have fun while you're doing it. So I'm going to say good night, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.